Hello, this is Chang, major in rhetoric of English department, and I'm a doctor program on Yonsei. And okay, now I will start my lecture on Mr. Churchill based on the article written by Robert Mudd. This article is part 2, chapter 12, Winston Churchill's Time Machines. And if you want to know about the book or article, you just can take the class of Professor Ruren Goodman, and the name of the class is The Rhetoric of Dreams on Yonsei. Okay, this is the book. This is the table of contents of my lecture. First of all, I look over notable features in the life of Winston Churchill. This portrait is pictured by Joseph Kirsch in 1941. The portrait has a background story. Actually, there is another version pictured by Kirsch, Churchill France. So when Kirsch takes the first version of portrait, Churchill France. But after a while, when Kirsch takes the second version, Churchill smiles. Okay. Winston Churchill served as the Prime Minister of the UK twice during the World War II and again from 1951 to 55. He formed the national government and oversaw British involvement in the Allied war effort against the Axis powers and resulted in victory in 1945. Among the Cold War with the Soviet Union, he publicly warned of an Iron Curtain of Soviet influence in Europe. Okay, now I'll talk about the article. Firstly, I'll talk about chapter 1, 2, and 3. In my opinion, this part deals with Churchill's vision throughout the past, present, and the future. Before talking about historical perspective on Mr. Churchill, Robert Mudd introduces Churchill's dream of dead people. The first one is about his dead father, Randolph Churchill. His father died due to syphilis when he was in France. In his dream, his dead father visited him and have a conversation about democracy, political systems. Churchill also met other dead people like the Duke of Marlborough, Sir Edward Grey. Thus, Robert Mudd sees that Churchill has the possibility of time travel to meet people in the past. In this chapter, Robert Mudd talks about episode of Churchill during the Boer War. Churchill survived in the war and also obtained three things, so it is called his luck. The reputation as a political celebrity, party agents, and demands for his books. Because Churchill earned money through his writings before he became a politician, so the last one is also important for Churchill's chances to earn money. Robert Mudd says that Winston Churchill well learned from the past historical events in order to see the future. His ancestor, Duke of Marlborough, is the famous for the victory over the French at Blenheim. Thus, Churchill also divided the forces during the World War II, learned from Marlborough's dividing forces during the Battle of Blenheim. Winston Churchill also declared the need for the moral and spiritual process. His period is coupled with the World War, Cold War, atomic weapons, and the prevalence of rampant new technologies. So Churchill emphasizes the need of the moral philosophy and spiritual concepts. Robert Mudd says that Churchill's abilities to see the future are also mentored There are three mentors: Frederick Lindemann, Desmond Morton, and H.G. Wells. But most focuses on H.G. Wells because Churchill's imagination and vision is mostly influenced by Wells and his science fiction. First, Wells fired up imagination of scientists as well as politicians. Next, Wells predicts the threats of atomic weapons. Okay, I'll talk about chapter. Actually, this is a small chapter of the article. 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess this part is about his mentality or mental statement. Winston Churchill suffered from the bipolar disorder. It is called black dog. So his mentality shows mood swings and sometimes he seems to be a bit moods. However, Robert Mudd says that Churchill still attempts to overcome his bipolar disorder. Thus, he seems to be a workaholic and he paints a lot in later years. Robert Mudd says Churchill is visionary, and it is unlike his common image of drinking whiskey and reading newspapers in his bed. Anyway, Churchill has the power of vision and transfers it to others. For instance, he warned that the British people would be involved in the battle with Hitler. There was a low possibility of victory over Hitler, but Churchill fired people to fight against the Axis. This sentence is one of his legendary sayings. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and his Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this is their finest hour. Well, this chapter is about conspiracy theories about Robert Hess and Churchill. Robert Hess is a very famous figure because he was a top-notch, but one day suddenly he left Notch and landed in Scotland. According to Hess, he came to make a British-German alliance against Soviet Union, and the negotiation would require the removal of Churchill. So this affair generates myriads of conspiracies and mysterious stories, like James Bond series. Actually, around the World War II, there are lots of conspiracies. But Robert Mudd says Winston Churchill seems to enjoy the conspiracies, like funny operations. Robert Mudd says there is a little information on his sleep dreams. Also, Churchill suffers from sleepless nights and insomnia. However, after he became a prime minister, Churchill slept well. Well, I guess it is not surprising because Prime Minister of UK are always very busy. Anyway, since Churchill talked about his dream to his personal physician, Lord Moran, he can track Churchill's dreams through diaries of Dr. Moran. Some of Churchill's dreams are about cigars, 10 cigars, sizes, history, blah blah blah. 3 years later, Churchill starts dreaming about dead people such as Sir Edward Grey. Okay, this is Robert Moses' conclusion on the life of Churchill. Churchill's traveling through time means that he can see the future from the past and the present. He lights up his adventures, so he has numerous writings. Churchill painted a lot in later years, which shows that his world on the other side. Okay, this is the reference for my lecture. Okay, this is the end of my lecture. Thank you for listening.